the regulatory provisions are easy. So, you know, Congress writes the law, and then the FAA and other regulatory agencies, they go write rules to implement the law they were charged with enforcing. And this does help people know what is expected of them, so they're not wandering around in the dark, wondering what the FAA wants before they give them a license. So the FAA said, the congressional statute and then the FAA regulations will say, this applies to US citizens launching rockets anywhere in the world, and it applies to anyone of whatever nationality launching in the United States. So that is a statutory provision that the FAA then copies and says, and then they get more detailed. And if you want to launch a rocket from the United States, you need to show us that you're going to do so safely. And here are the ways we think you'll be safe. So if you're launching a big old expendable launch vehicle with a high explosive yield, perhaps we, the FAA, would like to hear about your destruct system so that if it ever goes off course, we know that you will destroy it and it will be blown into smithereens over the ocean as opposed to over land. And so there's all sorts of regulations that tell you how to design and test that destruct system that you will put on your rocket.
Okay, so that's how FAA regulates human spaceflight.
No, the human spaceflight doesn't have the destruct system.
Well, I would hope, yeah. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Well, let's ask that question about people then. Yeah.
Oh, sure. So it's very interesting because it is such a nascent industry, the space tourism or people to space. That when Congress clarified that the FAA did have authority over people on board launch vehicles and reentry vehicles, it said, but you know what? We do not want the heavy hand of government to, you know, unduly burden the infant industry. So just like aviation got a barnstorming era where it got to try many different things and innovate away, we'd like to let the space industry have that period of time as well. So although it said, yes, the FAA is going to be licensing launches with people on board, it is not going to be allowed to issue regulations to protect the people on board. Keep protecting the people on the ground, but not the people on board for 8 years. And then that was in 2004. It's been extended several times. So if you're going on a rocket, instead of thinking that you're about to get on some nice, safe aircraft, you are going to be told that this has not been certified by the US government as safe. This is the informed consent part of it, where there's all these regulations about what you have to tell they're not a passenger, they are a spaceflight participant, because they are assuming a certain amount of risk too. So if you're a launch operator, you have to tell your participant that the government has not certified the vehicle as safe. You have to tell the participant about your own launch record, as well as the launch record of other vehicles like yours. And then, as of 2015, the participant has to sign an agreement that he will not sue you and that his estate will not sue you if something goes wrong and he is harmed.
Okay, so there's that waiver provision there.
There's the informed consent and waiver, and that's all in effect until 2023. It's been extended several times, so.
Okay, this is very interesting. I found out too late about air traffic control as a career. I think I would have been pretty good at it, but I still studied up on it, and there are a lot of great.
Well, you look good with the equipment there, so.
Thanks.
You
know. I find the audio quality of this thing is really, really good. And so, having read through those books, I've seen the history of regulation with the air industry, right? And yes, there are some parallels today with space. So that was neat that you brought that up. So there's all these commercial players, more and more every year, getting into the field. I'm curious what you believe needs to happen to educate them and ensure compliance from them so that we don't get into conflicts.
Well, you know, they should hire lawyers, of course. But, no, so under US law, everyone is, of course, charged with knowing the law and the regulations. And they, the government does a good job of publishing its proposed rules. It says, these are the things we're thinking of making you do. What do you think? And there's a big comment period. And then it publishes the final rules, and they're in books, they're online, they are available. And most, most people in regulated industries know, especially if they're in the type of industry that involves high explosive yields like rocket propellants do. So you will find that if you talk to any launch operators, any US launch operators, they know that they require a license from the FAA. So that's it's very, very common knowledge in the press, in the industry, et cetera. So for education, I think that it's nice when law schools offer space law, as the place I work does, and let young lawyers know about the outer space treaties, the different regulatory agencies, ITAR, and other laws that apply to private space actors.
More engineers are not going to solve your problem. It's not a technical problem in that sense. It's a process problem. And the time to fix your processes was 20 months ago, and the second best time is today. This is Jason Kanigan, the president of Cold Star Technologies and the host of this podcast, the Cold Star Project, which is all about identifying and solving process problems for space companies, because that's what we do. And you can hear the entirety of this episode by following the link in the comment below.